ones don't attack like the ones back home. Geese hiss. They're scary. I like that chinchilla is the same word in French. Oh, I see bunnies. Oh. Oh, your baby. Oh my god. You're a good boy. Oh my goodness. Today has been a bit of an odd date for me. It's just not going how I wish it would really. Like, I actually really debated on even filming today, but I read my chapter, so I just really want to start this on the right note and not delay it. But yesterday, we went to the Animal Expo in Vincennes. Got to see a bunch of cats and kittens, and I got to see Sphinx cats, which I call chicken cats, and almost cried seeing them because I really, really want to have a naked cat one day. But then after that, which I don't have any like pictures or film of, I just really wasn't thinking about it. I had my book club meeting, and I really wish this meeting would have happened before I did my wrap up, because the book we read, Haroun and the Sea of Stories by Salman Rushdie, which I still haven't looked up if that's actually how you say his name, but he's the one that wrote the Satanic Verses. One of the members of the book club, she's from India, so she knew like all of the history behind this book, and it put it in a whole different perspective. Like, it's hard to consider it a children's book now, knowing what everything means. So I think it's something that I actually am going to reread at some point, because it will honestly be two completely different experiences, and that's kind of the two ways you can view that book. Like, you can view it on the very surface level and be like, yeah, this is a children's story. It's just saying these things, that's all. And then if you know the history, it changes everything. And it's like a reading between the lines kind of deal. And you just get so much more out of it. So I originally rated it a 3 because I thought like it's fine, but not like the best. But now I think I'm going to bump it up to a 4. I was originally going to bump it up to a 5 just because the history is so fascinating. But it's also a book, and so I do want to consider my enjoyment of it as well. So I think I'm going to bump up my rating of that to a 4, just because like I have so much more respect for this book now. Like, the discussion went completely different from how I think any of us thought it was going to. So we all got an education and walked away a lot more enlightened about the history of India. And so today I only have one chapter to talk about. I didn't read one yesterday, and I really need to get out of the habit of doing that. But this was the last chapter of book 13, so tomorrow I'll be starting book 14. This is pretty much Marius joining the blockade, and he doesn't even talk to anyone. He just kind of like slowly sneaks up in the darkness and just sits down and starts crying. Like, he is not in a good mental state. And I'm going to read a little bit from page 949 here, because Marius is a dum-dum. So it says, his plight was terrible, but what else could he do? To live without Cosette was impossible. Since she had left him, he could only die. Had he not sworn to her that he would die? She had left him knowing this, therefore his death must be agreeable to her. In any case, it was clear that she no longer loved him, since she had gone off in this fashion without a word of warning, without a letter, although she knew his address. Why go on living? What was there left for him to live for? And then, how could he now draw back, having come so far? It's just like, what the fuck, dude? You've barely known her for like 2 months. Like, holy shit. Like, I don't give a shit when you first saw her. Like, you've only been talking to her for 2 months, dude. 2 months. This is just extreme. Their relationship is something I've never really liked in the story, and Marius as a character, actually, I've always just been like, about him, haven't really cared about him. And now, honestly, musical Marius and movie Marius are so much better than book Marius. He is just like so up his own ass. It's insane. So pretty much the rest of this chapter is just him contemplating like, oh, if I do this, like, is the ghost of my dad gonna be angry with me? And he's thinking about all the things that his dad did, because his dad fought for France, where, like, a revolution, it's French people versus French people. And he's like, oh, I'm glad I don't have my dad's sword, because I would be, like, literally hurting France with a sword that did so much to protect it. And so he's like lamenting about that. He's crying. No one's paying attention to him. Like, I don't understand if he's seated in a place of like shadows where they don't know he's there or not. Like, it doesn't really make that clear. But then all of a sudden he's like, yes, like, I'm ready to die for my country, because what we do here today, it is to better France so she'll heal from her wounds, kind of thing. And he looks up and he sees the person that was killed by Le Cabuc, I think his name was, which I forgot to mention. That's right, I forgot to talk about this. It's not directly said, but it's heavily implied that Le Cabuc, or whatever the hell his name is, was actually one of the 4 main leaders of, like, the underground of Paris. Like, the what was it called? Like, that group of people that helped Thénardier in the plot against Jean Valjean. Like, he is one of those, because he went by multiple names, and he pretty much disappeared after, like, Enjolras killed this guy, and so the police and everyone thinks that this was him, kind of thing. But Marius looks up and sees the dead guy, like, over the window, because no one's been able to get in the building to, like, move him or anything. So the chapter actually ends talking about, like, the blood coming down the building and, like, dripping on the ground. And so it's definitely a very, very ominous ending. And I think this next book is when some action is actually going to happen, and maybe some people are going to die, kind of thing. Because it's called Book 14, The Greatness of Despair. Chapter 1 is The Flag, Act 1. I'm not sure why it's called Act 1, because it is very short. It's only 2.5 pages, and then we get to The Flag, Act 2. So I'm not sure why that's separated like that, but this is a this is a book I'm really excited to get into, because I think this is when shit's gonna get real, kind of thing. So I'm probably going to read multiple chapters tomorrow, actually. I'm actually really looking forward to picking this up tomorrow, which is a good thing. I am very excited to talk about today's chapters. I read 2 today, both Act 1 and Act 2 of The Flag, I believe it was called. Things are definitely heating up. Like, we are in the action now. Things are happening. It all happens very, very quickly, too. And I got a little emotional with this second chapter. I almost teared up a little bit. So I'm actually going to be reading quite a lot from the chapters themselves, because, like, stuff is happening and I really don't want to skimp over that at all. So the beginning of this first chapter, it's pretty much just them still waiting. It does not mention Marius at all in these 2 chapters, so I honestly don't know what the hell is happening with him. But Enjolras had sent Gavroche away to go kind of scout what was going on, and so Gavroche comes back and is like, they're coming. So everyone gets into position and is ready to open fire, kind of thing. And then this is on page 954. It says, A short time passed, and then the tramp of marching feet, heavy, measured, and numerous, was clearly to be heard from the direction of Saint-Leu. The sound, faint at first, but growing in volume, drew steadily nearer, approaching without a pause, with a calm, inexorable rhythm. Nothing else was to be heard. The mingled silence and sound recalled the entrance of the statue of the Commendator in Don Giovanni, but that stony tread conveyed an impression of vastness, a suggestion not only of an army on the move, but also of something spectral, the march of an unseen legion. It drew nearer and nearer still, and then stopped. It was as though one could hear the breathing of many men at the end of the street. But still nothing was to be seen, except in the depths of the murky darkness a multitude of metallic gleams, needle-thin, scarcely perceptible and constantly in motion, like the phosphorescent threads that quiver beneath our eyelids in the first mists of sleep. They were bayonets and musket barrels, faintly illumined by the distant light of the torch. There was a pause, as though both sides were waiting. Suddenly, a voice called out of the darkness, the more awesome because no speaker was to be seen, so that it sounded like the voice of the darkness itself. "Who's there?" At the same time they heard the clicking of muskets being cocked. Enjolras responded in lofty and resonant tones, "The French Revolution." "Fire!" ordered the voice, and an instant glare of light shone upon the front of the houses as though a furnace door had been swiftly opened and closed. And Torty is climbing up the cat tree now. And then it goes on to the next page, A hideous blow shook the barricade. The red flag fell. So heavy and concentrated was that volley that it carried away the flagstaff, that is to say, the shift of the shaft of the omnibus. Bullets ricocheting back off the houses behind them wounded several of the defenders. The effect of that first discharge was stupefying, its sheer weight enough to make the boldest man think twice. They were evidently confronted by, at the least, a whole regiment. And then this last part in this chapter is a bit like, my guy, what are you doing? Enjolras picks up the flag and is like, who's going to put the flag back on the barricade? And he's just kind of standing there looking around, and is like, and literally the last sentence of this is, he repeated, does no one volunteer? It's like, bitch, do it yourself. If you think it's that important, fucking go up there yourself. And like it says, there was no reply. To climb onto the barricade at that moment when the muskets were again being leveled was simply to invite death. Like, duh, no shit, just fucking leave the flag. And so that goes into this next chapter, and this is where we have our first death. Well, I guess not the first, but the first one of a main character. Well, main character. And it's not who I expected. The beginning of this chapter actually talks about Père Mabeuf, because he had joined in like immediately with the group before the barricade had even gone up. And this whole time, I guess he pretty much just found a spot to sit in the tavern, and he's just been kind of chilling in there. And since stuff has started, the only people in there were him, the person guarding Javert, and Javert still tied to the pole. And so once the shooting happens, Père Mabeuf is just like, oh, my people need me, kind of thing, and rushes out. And this is on page 956. It says, he showed himself in the doorway of the tavern. His appearance created a stir among the defenders. Someone shouted, that's the man of the convention who voted for the king's death, the representative of the people. Probably he did not hear. Walking up to Enjolras, while the rebels made way for him with a sort of awe, he snatched the flag from the young man's startled hands, and, no one venturing to stop him, began slowly to mount the makeshift flight of paving stones leading to the top of the barricade. An 80-year-old man, his head swaying on his shoulders but his feet firm. So tragic and noble was the spectacle that the men around cried, hats off! Each step he took was terrifying to watch. The white hair, the shrunken face with its high, wrinkled forehead, the deep-set eyes, the open, astonished mouth, the old arms lifting the red flag on high. These things rose up out of the darkness, seeming to grow larger in the ruddy glare of the torch. It might have been the ghost of 93 arising from the tomb and bearing aloft the flag of terror. When he reached the topmost step, a quivering, terrible ghost, and stood on the pile of rubble, facing 1,200 invisible muskets, facing death as though he were stronger than death, the whole dark barricade acquired a new and awe-inspiring supernatural dimension. A silence fell, of the kind that only accompanies some prodigious event, and in the silence the old man flourished the red flag and cried, long live the revolution! Long live the republic! Fraternity, equality, and death! Those behind the barricade heard a distant rapid murmur like that of a hurried priest gabbling a prayer. It was probably the commissioner of police delivering the statutory warning from the other end of the street. The stentorian voice which had called to them before now shouted, go away! Monsieur Mabeuf, white and haggard, eyes glowing with the white light of madness, waved the flag and repeated, long live the republic! Fire! Ordered the voice. A second volley, like a charge of grape shot, crashed into the barricade. The old man tottered on his legs, attempted to recover, then let go the flag and fell backwards like a log, to lie full length on the ground with arms outstretched. Blood was pouring from him, and his sad, pale face seemed to be looking up to heaven. The rebels pressed forward, forgetful of their own safety, stirred by feelings loftier than man, and gazed with respectful awe at the dead body. And then I'm going to skip down a bit here. It says, bending down, Enjolras lifted the old man's head and kissed him gently on the forehead. Then, handling him with the utmost tenderness, as though he feared to hurt him, he removed his coat and held it up so that all might see its blood-stained holes. This is our new flag, he said. And that's the end of that chapter. Like, holy shit. Like, that gives me some goosebumps, actually. I felt like that was very powerful at the end there. And just, I understand what the flag represents, but to just be like, is someone going to go up there to die to put the flag back, but then the flag actually doesn't even end up going back? It's just a bit strange, I think. But I am happy that Monsieur Mabeuf, like, went out like a badass. Like, holy shit. Like, he was pretty much like at the end of his rope, and he's just like, here is this one last thing I can do for my people. And gosh, that one really got me. Like, I almost teared up from that. And now the next chapter is called Gavroche's Musket, which is the one that he took from Javert. And so I'm kind of scared if we are now to his death. With Monsieur Mabeuf, I don't remember if there's actually a character with that name in the musical or the movie. There isn't that I can recall. Man, he's definitely one of the characters that I respect probably the most in here. But that's where I'm going to end today. We will start tomorrow. We'll see if more people die. I assume they will. But until then, I suppose. So today has been a little bit weird weather-wise. I almost said weather-wise. Okay, can't really talk right now because I'm actually really excited over these chapters I just read today. But it's 72 degrees right now. Like, this is so weird. I think it was yesterday morning we started the day out in the 40s. So this is just bizarre, but the sun keeps coming out and it is really windy though. So it's a bit of a strange day. But I just finished reading 2 more chapters in this and stuff is happening, and the end of the first chapter I read, I was just like, ah! Like, oh my gosh, I just startled Ori. But okay, I'm gonna have to read stuff out of here and like prepare to be amazed. Like, I can't say what I want to say because it'll give it away. What I thought was gonna happen here does not, considering it's called Gavroche's musket. But basically they take Père Mabeuf's body, they take it into the tavern. And while that's happening, Gavroche is the only one still outside, and he's basically like, look out, because the people that have been shooting at them were now like coming over the barricade and like sticking weapons through the barricade to shoot at them and stuff like that. So everyone runs back outside just in time to like start retaliating. So this is on page 958, and I'm going to read from basically the middle of the page to the end of the chapter, and it says, Courfeyrac, Enjolras, and the others came rushing out of the tavern. They were barely in time. A dense glitter of bayonets was now visible on the other side of the barricade. The tall forms of municipal guardsmen surged in, some climbing over the omnibus and others coming by way of the breach. Gavroche was forced to give ground, but he did not run away. It was a critical instant, like the moment when floodwaters rise to the topmost level of an embankment and begin to seep over. In another minute, the stronghold might have been taken over. Bahorel sprang towards the first man to enter and shot him at point-blank range. A second man killed him with a bayonet thrust. Courfeyrac was felled by another man and called for help. The biggest of all the attackers, a giant of a man, bore down with his bayonet on Gavroche. Raising Javert's heavy musket, the boy took aim and pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. Javert had not loaded the musket. The municipal guardman laughed and thrust at the youngster with his bayonet. But before the bayonet could reach Gavroche, the musket fell from the man's hands and he himself fell backwards with a bullet in his forehead. A second bullet took the man assailing Courfeyrac in the chest and laid him low. Marius had entered the stronghold. Your boy is finally doing stuff! Oh my god! Like, this is just... That was a perfect way to end that chapter. It's literally, like it says it right away in the next chapter, he's literally coming in with a pistol in each hand fucking shooting. Like, what the fuck Wild West shit is this? Like, oh my gosh. I feel like this is supposed to be Marius's redemption just because of how fucking stupid he has been throughout the entirety of this book. And then he fucking comes out of nowhere and saves the day kind of thing. Where was this in the movie? Like, where is Marius dual-wielding fucking Javert's pistols in the movie? I need this moment. Shut up outside. I'm not talking to you right now. So then the next chapter is called The Powder Keg, and these are both very, very short chapters. And this is where it pretty much says how Marius was just sitting there in the dark kind of watching everything happen, but then seeing like Père Mabeuf die and his friends be in trouble, he really didn't think, he just kind of got up and started shooting. Like it says, the imminence of the peril, the death of Monsieur Mabeuf, that tragic enigma, the killing of Bahorel, Courfeyrac's call for help, the threat to Gavroche, friends to be rescued or avenged, all this had thrown hesitation to the winds. He had rushed into the melee with a pistol in either hand, and one had saved Gavroche, the other Courfeyrac. And apparently there was only one shot in each, because he throws the guns away after that, and it's just kind of like, okay, you do you, I guess. And apparently he had noticed this powder keg. I don't understand if it's in the tavern or just outside of the tavern, but basically he takes it, goes to the top of the barricade while like everyone is fighting and shooting. I guess there's a lot of smoke and stuff, so you can't really see very well. He is like using something to like hold it there and has a torch in his other hand and basically threatens like, leave or I'm going to blow up the barricade. They're all like, if you blow it up, then you're gonna kill yourself too. And he's like, I don't give a fuck. And so he goes to like set the powder keg on fire, and it says, But there was no longer anyone on the barricade. The attackers had made off in a disorderly stampede, leaving their dead and wounded behind, and were now vanishing in the darkness at the far end of the street. It was a ruse, and the fortress had been relieved. And so that's how that chapter ends. And we're not done with the book yet, actually. There's still 2 chapters, it looks like. But the next one is a bit ominous, because it's called The Last Poem of Jean Prouvaire. Ooh, Tortilla's running around. But now Marius is finally there, finally doing shit. And I don't know, I just find it so weird that out of all of them, he's the one that comes in like guns blazing as like this big hero. Oh, and I almost forgot. I almost freaking forgot because I was distracted by the powder keg thing. Marius almost gets shot, but someone prevents it. And this is on page 959. Marius was now weaponless, having flung away his discharged pistols, but he had seen the keg of powder near the door in the lower room of the tavern. While he was looking at it, a soldier leveled his musket at him, but as he was in the act of firing, a hand was thrust over the muzzle, diverting it. The person who had flung himself forward was the young workman in corduroy trousers. The ball shattered his hand and perhaps entered his body, for he fell, but it did not touch Marius. It was an episode in misted darkness, half seen rather than seen. Marius, on his way into the tavern, was scarcely aware of it. He had vaguely seen the musket leveled at him and the hand thrust out to block it, and he had heard the discharge. But at moments such as these, when events follow at breathless speed, we are not to be distracted from whatever purpose we have in mind. We plunge on blindly amid the fog around us. And that's all that's mentioned of that person. And I believe that's supposed to be Eponine, who's in disguise. Okay, Torgie keeps running back and forth behind me. Why you zoom in? Why you zoom? She's definitely in a playful mood right now. But nothing else is mentioned after that, and so I'm not sure if like when the dust settles and they're kind of going over who's still alive in the rubble kind of thing, if that's when he's gonna find her or not. Because obviously in like the media of it and stuff, it's pretty much revealed right away, holy shit, this was Eponine kind of thing. But that's definitely not the case in here. It's just completely ignored. He barely even notices that someone just saved him kind of thing. So there's just a lot of chaos happening right now, and I am loving every second of it. I think this is the most excited I've been in this story. Like, to me, this is just the whole culmination of the plot right here. So I'm very excited to read on tomorrow. So I'm actually really excited that I'm getting at least one more day of being able to read outside on the couch. I feel like I haven't really been able to do that much this year. And this is the other thing I'm reading right now as I stab myself in the face with it. Clown in a Cornfield. It is not the greatest right now. I'm just over 100 pages in and we only have the very first death, so I mean it's been very slow so far, but like the past few weeks have been so weird because like oh god, what did I just do to my hair? But yeah, the past few weeks have been so weird because with all the reading vlogs I've been doing and stuff, pretty much I have like 3 books going at once at all times, and so I'm reading them at like different parts of the day. Like my Les Miserables and the short story collections I've been reading, I pretty much do like one right after another, and then like this I usually only read at night before bed, but right now I want to read outside when I can, so I'm going to try to read that a little bit during the day for once. And then Torty is also enjoying the weather outside while she still can. Oh my goodness. Yum.
He's going to show up. He's already out of the thing.
He always does.
He's sniffing up his bed though.
That's fine. It's just washed.
Yeah. No, you have to be here.
The boy has arrived. The boy has arrived. Oh jeez. She's so cute though. And he is just an observer. So cute. Alright. I have a bit to say about these chapters, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I need to do a little story time real quick. So last night we were eating dinner. It was around like 6:30, 6:45, something like that. And my phone starts ringing. And now I have a phobia of answering the phone. And pretty much the only people that ever call me are people for deliveries. They're delivering packages kind of thing. Like no one has my phone number kind of thing. And it said it was a UK number, and I'm just like, who the hell would have my number from the UK? So I just let it ring, didn't answer it, whatever. We finished dinner. About half an hour later, I look, see a voicemail. I go to listen to it, and it's like, hey, I am so-and-so for Squid Game. And I was like, oh shit, I should have answered that. So literally months ago, like probably beginning of summer, we both applied to be on the new Squid Game show that they're going to do, where it's basically a reality show version of the show. And if you don't know what Squid Game is, it was a super popular show on Netflix. It pretty much took over the entire world for a little bit there. And I convinced Toma to apply with me, like, just for the fun of it, because, I mean, we want to get a house. So, I mean, if we could miraculously get on there and win some money, I'm not going to complain. And I got a call back, I guess. But I called the number back that had called me, and it went to voicemail. And so I left my information that I asked for and stuff. And now I'm just in this perpetual state of anxiety, waiting on this freaking phone call. And it's just about noon here, and I haven't heard anything yet, but like they called at like 6:30 last night. So I'm just like, fuck, is it gonna be that late again? So I don't know if I even will get a call back since I missed the first one, but I don't know. They told me to call them back, so I tried. But we'll see if anything actually comes from that. It was very surprising, and I really wish I didn't have a phone phobia now. So anyway, I read 2 chapters of Les Miserables, and I was actually wrong. There's 3 chapters until the end of the book, but, oh god, these 2 chapters. Okay, so this first one, right away in the beginning, I'm just like, why would you do that? Like, what is the point? Because this is on page 961, and right in the beginning it says, his friends flocked around Marius, and Courfeyrac flung his arms around his neck. So you've come, he cried. And welcome, said Combeferre. At the right moment, said Boussette. I'd be dead otherwise, said Courfeyrac. I'd have copped it too, said Gavroche. Where is the leader? Marius asked. You're now the leader, Enjolras said. Fucking why? Why? He literally has been so preoccupied with Cosette. Like, the book mentioned how he doesn't see his friends anymore. He hasn't talked to them. He hasn't gone to, like, ABC Society meetings in months, maybe even, like, a whole year or more. Like, he's literally just been either wallowing in his self-pity or going crazy over Cosette. That's literally it. And so for them to just be like, oh, hey, you're here, you're the leader now, it's just like, why would you condemn yourselves like that? Pretty much they realize that Jean Prouvaire, their, like, poet guy, that he's missing, and so they're like, crap, they've captured him. And then they have Javert, so they're like, oh, well, maybe we can do like a prisoner swap kind of thing. But then it says, an ominous rattle of muskets had come from the other end of the street. A brave voice shouted, long live France, long live the future. It was the voice of Jean Prouvaire. They've shot him, cried Combeferre. Enjolras turned to Javert and said, your friends have killed you as well. So obviously, as of right now, the plan is to still kill Javert at the end of this, and he is still just tied to that pole, just chilling. So then the next chapter, it's called The Throes of Death After the Throes of Life. And this is where we finally find Eponine, who is wounded and dying. And my major criticism about Marius and Eponine is they really never show that she's in love with him. Like, I really feel like they should have developed this relationship a lot more. I really find this sudden and weird, and it almost feels out of character for Eponine at this point, and I'm just not a fan of it. So basically, Marius goes to check on the tinier barricade that's around the corner because no one is there guarding it. And so he's like, can't people just like fucking walk in here? And he hears someone calling his name, and they're like, I'm down at your feet. And he looks down and sees Eponine. He's like, what the fuck are you doing here? What is happening? And Marius is a bit of a dum-dum. This is on page 963. It says, she lifted her hand for him to see, and he saw a hole in the center of the palm. What happened? He asked. A bullet went through it. A bullet? But how? Don't you remember a musket being aimed at you? Yes, and a hand was clapped over it. That was mine. Marius shuddered. It is just like, really? But I guess she said that the ball went through her hand and then exited out her back. So I'm assuming, like I don't really understand that, because I feel like if you had, like, your hand out and, like, clasped over it, it would have just gone through your hand. Like, she must have, I don't know, like gone in front of it and did it like that? I don't know. I don't really understand. Like, I feel like the positioning for that is a bit weird. But basically, she's just kind of rambling on and on. She's like, we're all gonna die. Literally one of the things she says. But she basically asks for him to sit down. She puts her head on his lap. And he just kind of comforts her in her last moments. Then she's like, oh, I have this letter. I was supposed to put it in the post, but I didn't want you to actually receive this letter, so I kept it. And I am immediately assuming that this is a letter from Cosette. And it's like, why would you fucking do that? You're gonna die, and now he's gonna be pissed at you. This is on page 965. She says, look, I can't cheat you. I have a letter for you in my pocket. I've had it since yesterday. I was asked to post it, but I didn't. I didn't want you to get it, but you might be angry with me when we meet again, because we shall all meet again, shan't we? Take your letter. But I just really don't like that this is how her story is going. Like, I don't know. She just feels so underdeveloped right now as a character, and I find it frustrating. And, like, this is the first real, like, hint of jealousy, kind of. And, I mean, since I already knew that she was in love with Marius from, like, the movie and stuff and musical, like, I could kind of see some things in how she acted. But, I mean, if you don't know, this would completely come out of the blue. And I just wish that this had been developed a lot more. So then she asks Marius to promise her that when she dies, he'll like kiss her forehead. She's like, I'll know if you don't do it. And so it says on the very next page, she let her head fall back on his knees. Her lids fluttered and then she was motionless. He thought that the sad soul had left her, but then, when he thought it was all over, she slowly opened her eyes that were now deep with the shadow of death and said in a voice so sweet that it seemed already to come from another world, you know, Monsieur Marius, I think I was a little bit in love with you. She tried to smile and died. So her death is a bit sad there. Like, that's kind of brutal. But it's still just like, it's so frustrating. I just want more character development from them. And so then there's an 8th chapter here, which I didn't realize, and it's called Gavroche Reckons Distances. That sounds kind of scary. And so I think that is the last chapter in this book. Yes, looks like it is. So as of right now, we have 4 main/side character deaths. Eponine and Père Mabeuf being the top 2, but then the Jean Prouvaire and Balmoral, I think was his name. Those are the other 2 named characters that have died. So shit's going down, and I'll check out this last chapter tomorrow. What are you doing, Appa? He's pulled them all the way to his hay. Look at that. It's a trail of your fucking food. Yeah. It's almost all gone, Appa. What doing? You getting out every last kernel? Every last kernel, Appa? So I'm back, but not on the day that I thought I would be. It is actually Sunday today. And yesterday we were gone for like 7 hours at my friend's house. We had a very nice lunch. She made a bunch of different recipes that she had wanted to try, and I was not expecting her to cook so much. Like, it was a really good meal, and we ended up talking for a really long time. Like, time went by really fast. It was just a really good day, but also very tiring. I was so tired by the time we got home. There was just no way I could read anything. I didn't read at all yesterday. So I just read the last chapter of this book today, and basically it just gives reasoning behind why Eponine did what she did. And I really dislike it. It's dumb. I would honestly rather this chapter just not be there and have it be left how it is. So obviously, in the last clip, Eponine finally died at the barricade, and she gave Marius this letter, and he immediately wants to read it. And obviously, it's from Cosette. And this is on page 966. It says, "My dearest, alas, father insists that we must leave here at once. We go tonight to number 7 Rue de l'Homme, and in a week we shall be in England. Cosette, June 4th. But then it goes on to give Eponine's reasoning, and I'm going to read this whole part. It's pretty much about a page long, but it goes from page 966 to 967. And it says, "What had happened may be briefly told. Eponine was responsible for everything. After the evening of the 3rd of June, she had had two things in mind: to frustrate the plan of her father and his friends to robbing the house in the Rue Plumet, and to separate Marius and Cosette. She had exchanged clothes with a youth who thought it amusing to go about dressed as a woman, while she dressed up as a man. It was she who, in the Champ de Mars, had given Jean Valjean the note warning him to change his address. Valjean had gone home and said to Cosette, "We're moving this evening with Toussaint to the Rue de l'Homme Armé, and next week we're going to London." Cosette, shattered by this unexpected blow, had hardly written her letter to Marius, but how was it to be posted? She never went out alone, and Toussaint, surprised by an errand of this nature, would certainly show the letter to her master. While she was debating the matter, Cosette had caught sight of Eponine through the garden gate, wandering in her male attire up and down the street. Thinking she had to do with a young workman, she had called to the girl and given her 5 francs in the letter, asking her to take it at once to the address given. Eponine had put the letter in her pocket, and the next day, the 5th, had gone to Courfeyrac's lodging, not to give him the letter, but simply, as any jealous lover will understand, to have a look. She had waited there for Marius, or anyway for Courfeyrac, still only having a look, but when Courfeyrac told her that he and his friends were going to the barricade, a sudden impulse had seized her, to plunge into that death as she would have plunged into any other, and take Marius with her. She had followed Courfeyrac to find out where the barricade was situated, and then, since she was certain, having intercepted Cosette's letter, that Marius would go as usual to the Rue Plumet, she had gone there herself and passed on the summons, supposedly from his friend, which she had no doubt would lead him to join them. She had counted on Marius's despair at not finding Cosette, and in this had judged rightly. She had returned separately to the Rue de la Chanvrerie, and we know what had happened there. She had died in the tragic rapture of jealous hearts, who take the beloved with them into death, saying, "No one else shall have him." Sorry, Thomas is just coming home. So I didn't realize that Eponine has had this grand plan, and I don't know why she didn't try to then kill Marius at the end if she wanted him to die with her. I don't know, it's just a bit strange, and it makes me like Eponine a bit less. But pretty much Marius is like, well, it doesn't really matter because we're gonna die here, but oh my god, she still loves me. And so he writes his own letter to Cosette, which he then has Gavroche go to take it to her. But his letter says, this is on page 968, "Our marriage was impossible. I went to my grandfather and he refused his consent. I have no fortune, neither have you. I hurried to see you, but you were no longer there. You remember the pledge I gave you? I shall keep it. I shall die. I love you. When you read this, my soul will be very near at hand and smiling at you." So Marius fully expects to die at this barricade, and is basically just writing this goodbye letter to Cosette, and it's just like, can you not? What? So apparently Marius is definitely one of those where it's like, if he can't be with the woman, then he's literally just gonna kill himself kind of thing, which obviously, knowing the story of Les Mis, we know that doesn't happen. So I'm not really sure how that's all going to play out in the book, if she is going to think he's actually dead and come to the barricade maybe, or what? I'm not really sure how that's going to go. But yeah, that just ends with him handing the letter to Gavroche and Gavroche running off to deliver it. And it even mentions that the road is very close to the barricade. So I'm really wondering if when Gavroche gives her the letter, she's going to come back with him. But I guess we'll see. But the next book it's book 15, and it is called In the Rue de l'Homme Armé, and the first chapter is called The Treacherous Blotter, so I guess now we're going to see what is going on with Cosette and Jean Valjean, so that is where we will start next week. So thank you for hanging out with me, it is always appreciated, and until next time, bonne journée, and au revoir!